Welcome to the Perspectives with Catherine Toon podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Perspectives with Catherine Toon. I have a newish friend who feels like a very, I want to say old friend, a well-known, familiar friend. How's that?
Thank you.
Pastor
Thank
Jerry
you. It's a pleasure
Gray,
to be
welcome.
here. So, yeah, we have old connections.
I've had a really good time on your. We do, which is one of the reasons why it feels like an old friend, so to speak. So, well, tell us about that and tell us about yourself.
My father was I grew up on a farm, and along about 13 years old or so, 14 years old, 14 probably, my mom and dad came to the knowledge of Jesus Christ. And then within a couple of years, my dad started a church and was a pastor of a church. And I was a little on the rebellious side, but teenager, right? And then
No.
and then entered into the military and things like that, and then along the way got tied into an independent Baptist church, and we're in an independent Baptist denomination for several years. And you might want to change the spelling of my name because it's not Graty, it's Gray. So I just noticed that.
Oh, look at that! Yeah.
Anyway, no big deal.
I don't know.
So anyway, they.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll get it. Don't worry.
Yeah.
You're on.
Anyway, they.
So it covered me.
So we were in that sex for a while, and probably what really drove me away from that was we moved different places out of the military, and the church we ended up in was probably a smallish to medium sized church, and they were having a Luis Palau crusade. I don't know whether you're familiar with him or not. They were having a crusade in another town, in a college town, not too far from where we live.
Yes.
And I had heard about it through some friends that were in different churches. And I lived in a small enough town that we, kind of knew almost everybody. And so I wanted to be involved in this. And my pastor told me, absolutely not. You may not be involved in that. And I'm like, well, I don't think you can tell me what I can and can't do. And so basically that in the long run, led to us leaving that church. And we went from there to a Southern Baptist church in name only. And I say that because the pastor and associate pastor were evangelical free pastors. So it was a little bit of a different type place. And then some of the and we left that church because some of the older staunch Southern Baptists didn't like that transition that they were making. So they basically fired the pastor and the youth pastor, and my kids swore that they would never go back to that church. And so we ended up in the charismatic, actually Assembly of God, charismatic Pentecostal. My kids went one way and went to a charismatic church with friends, and then we ended up in a Assembly of God Pentecostal church, which was more along the lines of how I felt anyway. I don't know, evolved into, and then we moved a couple other times. Ended up back in my wife's hometown where she grew up. We were searching for And actually, during the time I was in Assembly of God Church, I was an interim pastor in a small church for a year and a half, I guess. And then, and during that time, I was also the head of the deacon board and the head of the pastor search committee and all that kind of stuff. And I felt God saying, "It's time for you to go." And I would say, and almost invariably, he would wake me up at 3:00 in the morning and say, on Sunday morning, 3:00 on Sunday morning, and say, "It's time for you to go." And I would say, "As soon as we find a pastor, I'll do that," you know. And so this went on for a couple, 3 months probably. And not every Sunday, but almost. And then one morning I got up, and I would get up and I would go over when I'd wake up, you know. It seemed like he would wake me up at 3:00 in the morning regardless. And I would go over stuff that I was going to talk about that Sunday and things and different things. And I'd be sitting there praying and going over stuff. And I heard him say, "It's time for you to go." And I started to say my pat answer of "as soon as." I got about that far, and I heard this almost audible voice say, "No, now." And I went, "Oh, okay, okay." And so, and we were having some, I don't know, the church was having some squabbles about, you know, hiring a pastor and all this kind of stuff. And I kept telling them, you know, "You're not big enough to hire a seasoned pastor. You need to just hire, you know, you're a stepping stone church. So a youth pastor is going to come in here, and then they're going to go someplace else." And they were adamant they were not going to hire a youth pastor, right? And so we were supposed to have a church meeting on Sunday night. And so when my wife woke up, I told her, and she was basically ran the Sunday school department and the children's church department, and she loved the kids, and she was like, she was heartbroken, kind of. And so she went to church, and we were both on the praise and worship team. I played guitar and keyboard and stuff, and she was supposed to sing that week, and she couldn't hardly sing because she was weepy. And I said, "Don't say anything to anybody, and we have this meeting on Sunday night, and we'll tell them then." And so after church, we went home and wrote our resignation letters, and went to the meeting that night, and immediately they started bickering and stuff like that. And I went, "You know, stop. I think I can fix this." And I just slid my resignation letter out on the table, and it changed the whole demeanor of the meeting. And within 2 weeks, Catherine, they hired a youth pastor to take over the church.
Wow.
And then, and so then we ended up moving back to,
oh my gosh, how funny,
my wife's hometown where she grew up. And we had gone to different churches, you know, just looking, trying to figure out where we wanted to go and stuff. And really hadn't settled on anything. And this is no joke. Literally, I picked up the phone book one Sunday morning and said, and I'm going through churches and stuff, and I'm like, "Well, look at this. Here's a church, and the pastor's name is Paul Gray. And my last name's Gray." So I'm like, and my wife says, "I know who Paul Gray is. He used to own a nightclub." And I'm like, hold on. "You're telling me this pastor used to own a nightclub?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, we got to go." And so we went to that church.
Sounds like,
and at the time they did
great.
a lot of, they had a lot of different people that taught different Sundays, you know. And so we went, and it wasn't Paul that taught, and it was very good. We liked it. And he met us at the door and said, "Well, you know, make sure you come back, you know." And we're like, "Okay, fine." And so the next Sunday we went back, and it wasn't Paul that taught. And so he met us at the door again and said, "Well, thanks for coming back." He said, "I'm teaching next Sunday, so if you don't come back after that, I'll know it's me." And so anyway, so we went back and we uh,
That's cute.
ended up joining into that church. I mean, they didn't have an official role, which really appealed to me. And so there wasn't a church membership role.
Right.
And so, because I didn't like I didn't like a lot of the hierarchy of the church, you know what I mean? And and then we found out through, and I was kind of
Wow.
semi-retired at the time and wasn't really working. And so they had a clinic on Wednesday mornings, or Wednesday, they would have a clinic down there. And so I would go down on Wednesday morning and just be there, and I would pray with people that were coming into the clinic and just whatever, you know. And then they would have, they had Paul used to have what he called a brown bag lunch with Paul Gray. And so we would sit around the table and just have kind of a Bible study over lunch. And this was about the time he started going through receiving the grace message. It's about the time he started receiving that. And I was more of a faith preacher,
Nice.
more of a faith evangelist type guy. And I was pretty hot on that.
Right.
And so somewhere along the way, we ended up being best friends. And then he told everybody I was his little brother, and he was, you know, I'm 6'5" and he was like 5'6", and so it was a fun thing. And then,
Yes.
but he would say often, I believe that God brought you here to teach me faith and me to teach you grace. And I said, I believe that.
Wow.
I believe that. And so we actually went on
Wow.
this grace road together for the most part. And I mean, you know, we went through Steve McVeigh stuff and Bill Gilliam stuff and just, you know, different anything we get Baxter Kruger, a lot of Baxter Kruger stuff and stuff like that, and just made this transition from what I call organized religion into freedom gospel. And so anyway, and we did that, and then
Yes.
and I ended up taking the position of worship pastor and associate pastor, and then a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, I guess, Paul passed away, and so that fell on me. It was a rough
It was
time,
him.
and for me and for all of us really, and because it was really, we didn't expect it. It was totally
Yes.
sudden, and
Yeah.
but God has been so good.
Out of the
He
blue.
has given us a lot of understanding. He's given me a lot of understanding and revelation, and I I love our group. We do an online church, and we started online church during COVID, and after we have people all over the world join in our fellowship on Sunday morning, and so when when they said we could go back into a building, we Paul and I couldn't figure out how to make that happen and keep the same continuity that we had, because our group is not the kind of group where the pastor gets up and teaches and teaches and teaches and then everybody goes home. Our group is where somebody gets up, whoever's leading the group, they get up and do, and I'm not the only one that does this. That I ask other people in the group to do this too. But for instance, I'll get up and do maybe 10 or 15 minutes of something thought provoking, or I try to do something really thought provoking, whatever God's been talking to me about that week, usually is how it goes. And then I just turn them loose. And we kind of live by the that verse where it says that iron sharpens iron. And we just, we learn so much from each other.
Yes.
In those sessions. And it's just it's an extreme blessing. I love it. And
It is. It is. It
Yeah.
is quite a phenomenon, having visited twice, and that it is.
Yeah.
It's beautiful to see, and just what people bring to the table. It's
Yeah.
everybody has something to offer, which is just really how it should be, right? This is the
Yeah. You've
body
been on
being the
with us a couple
body. So
times.
I love that format. So
Yeah.
so
Do what
you
now?
chose to stay with that rather than going back in a
Yeah.
building. Yes, yes, it's been delightful. I said you chose to
We
stay
just
with that
we
format
couldn't figure out how to
versus going back in a building.
keep the same people involved, and it just, I mean, we could have done just a recorded
Yeah,
sermon, but that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to keep the input.
right.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to keep the input and stuff, and we have people that are really involved all week long in different groups and stuff like that. They do different Zoom calls and stuff,
Yeah.
and so we gather from that on Sundays, all the things that they do, and it's really a cool setup. I really like the way
Nice.
it works, and so, and like you've been a guest on a couple times. We have guest speakers. We try and do that once a month. Sometimes we have to do 2 weeks back to back to get everything in. Um, so,
Nice.
but yeah, it's
Right. Yeah, we
yeah,
it's beautiful and all over the world. I
yeah.
mean,
We
this
never
is
really
not
know who's going to
just
be on there
local.
either.
So
So,
that's
'cause we
lovely.
have
Wow.
we have a couple
Well,
sisters in South Africa that are on and off whenever they can get
that's
on.
great.
'Cause sometimes their service is poor, and so at the time that it's evening for them when we have it, because we have it at
Mhm.
11 o'clock in the morning here at my time, which is Central Time,
Yeah.
and so overseas it's evening, and we have people from the Netherlands and from Germany and Scandinavia and England, and it's just, and then several different areas of the United States. So it's just it's pretty cool.
It's it's
So
it's very cool. Love it. Yeah. I love that. So we thought we would talk about today
yeah,
a journey to
yeah.
learn our true identity, which I love. I love that. So it is this a topic that you found like because I had to really struggle and grow in this. This is something near and dear to my heart.
Well, I
How
mean,
was this topic
I
something
feel
that was kind
like
of a hot button for you?
that God is continuously giving us new revelation to who we are in Him. I mean, because there's no way we can get the whole download at one time.
This
There's just no way we can understand that. And so, and
truly,
and I think if he tried to do that all at one time, it might be um, almost scary. You know what I mean? It would scare us away. Scare us away. And so the
yeah, the
little snippets that he gives us along the
yeah,
way are, to me, the easiest way to grasp. Like, I mean, it's like eating an elephant. You don't just take one big bite. You take a little bite at a time. And that's the way our identity in Christ is.
yeah,
We can't fathom the whole thing at one time.
yeah.
And so as we go along our life, he continues to give us circum, circumstances and situations, and helps us through those, that teach us more and more and more about who we really are in him. And I you know I
Yes.
don't think we could do it any other way. I don't think he would do it any other way, because, I mean, we're made in his image, and he teaches us the way he thinks we're going to learn, because he knows us that well. And so yeah, it's incredible to
Absolutely.
walk the the path to learning our identity, and we'll never have it all. I don't think we'll ever have it all until
It's
we meet
true.
him. You know,
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, if we're in
yeah,
his image and likeness, wow, that is a whole lot. That's a whole lot to learn. And, yeah,
we
so it
do.
takes, and we have to unlearn a lot. Yeah, we have to unlearn a lot of what we've been told in religion, but what we've
Mhm.
just been told in our lives about who we are, and relearn.
Well,
And
it's a far
it
cry
is
from
an
you're a
ongoing
worm and you're
process.
worthless to you're the pearl of great price. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a long ways between there, and that's what he wants us. That's the road he wants us to take.
Yes.
That's the road he takes us down. He doesn't just want us to take it; he takes us down that road and leads us and guides us in his perfection and in his awesome love and and tremendous grace that he pulls us. He just pulls us along, and that's how I feel anyway. And it just it's it's so cool. I can't. It's hard to describe actually. The feeling sometimes. It's almost overwhelming.
It
Yeah.
it is overwhelming, and overwhelmingly good. We have such either inflated and falsely inflated that don't look less, or falsely deflated, and so we have two ditches that we can head into, but the fullness
Hmm.
of who we are in
It's
him
interesting you said
is
we have two
breathtaking,
ditches.
because he's a breathtaking
It's
God.
interesting you said we have two
and
ditches because
and breathtaking.
there's a scripture that says that
Yes.
the road is narrow, straight is the way, the road is narrow, and that really plays to that
Mm-hmm.
scripture. And religion would have you think, you know, you have to act a certain
Yes.
way or you're not on the road. Well, that's not the case at all. The case is that it's the two ditches that you just
Yeah.
described, and we're in between, and he's drawing us along on this
Yes.
perfect road that he's developed, and it's all his perfect
Yeah.
love that draws us along that road. And in fact, is the road is his perfect love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yes. Isn't that yes? Hot button for me. Yeah, I mean, and it really is, because perfect
yeah,
love sees 2020, sees exactly you as you are, and me as I
yeah,
am,
yeah.
and is smitten with, with his kids, smitten with who we are, despite how we're acting sometimes, but just as smitten with, like, who we
Uh-huh.
are, and is calling us
Well, if we go back to
into manifesting,
to
into being
Moses,
unveiled. Yeah,
um,
in his
basically
image.
God was setting him up when he said, "Tell them I am sent you." And I have developed this, which I think God has led me to develop this.
Right.
When I introduce myself to people, and I do, um, I work by appointment, and I meet new people every day, and I love that. I told my wife I have the best job in the world because I go out every day and make new friends. And so,
Yes.
but when I meet somebody for the first time,
Oh,
or
nice.
even not the first time, I always introduce myself as I am Jerry J.L. Gray. I don't, because that I am is the biggest part of me
Right.
that lives inside of me. And so I just think it gives me that confidence to let him shine through me because I am lives in me, and we're not called to do anything, Catherine. We're called
Yes.
to be.
Yeah.
We're not called to do. We're called to be. And my take on that is
Yeah.
let's just be I am.
Exactly.
I mean, why not? And so,
Yeah. Beautiful. It's beautiful. And it's interesting because then you end up doing things, but it's out of the overflow of your I amness, one with God, who you are as one with Him,
yeah. Well,
and it's
the
beautiful.
things
But
we
that it's
do
a byproduct.
are
It's
not
not the thing.
are
It's a
not something
byproduct.
that's a requirement.
Mhm.
The things that we end up doing are a love gift,
Mhm. Yes.
not our love gift, but His love gift through us.
Hmm.
And so, it's hard to beat that. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It is hard to beat that. Yeah, and it's so many times that we've gotten so confused about in the in Christian circles about service and that sort of thing, is when you're tracking out of who you are, which is love. You're going to serve as a
Yeah,
byproduct, but it's
yeah,
not a requirement.
yeah.
It's just the
I have a
overflow of what's
I have a
already
friend
in
that he's
there.
one of his favorite
Yeah,
things to say is,
it's
you
beautiful.
know, the best praise and worship song ever written was written by the Doobie Brothers called "Taking It to the Streets." And I'm like, I and that's just God. That's just God working through
Oh,
us, and that's what He
that's adorable.
does. He takes it to the
That
street and to wherever He calls
for
us to
sure.
to be at the time. And that's the key word, to be. He calls us to be, not to do. He doesn't call us to do. He
Yeah.
calls us to be.
Yes. Yep. And that is a hard one. That is a hard thing to come to, because we're so used to doing and getting our identity out of what we do and
Yeah,
propping up our identities out of what we do. And, you know, uh, it's a hard one to break, but
yeah,
operating in that place of rest out of who you are, it's a beautiful thing, and it ministers life. And there's an authenticity
yeah.
that
The
people
authenticity is the
resonate
God in
with,
us.
which is life giving.
The hope of glory. That's it. We are that hope
Yes.
of glory. Because we are Him, and we're in Him, and He's in us, and there's no
Beautiful.
differentiation. And whether we know it or not, that's the part that I think is beautiful. Is that
Yeah.
there are people out there that are full of the Spirit of God and don't realize it. They're full of the life of God and don't realize it at all.
So true.
And God will draw us to draw them
Mhm.
into that revelation. And so
Yeah.
He, I don't like the term He uses us, because I guess I don't like feeling used. but but
Yeah. I don't like
he
that term either.
lives
Sometimes it's hard to come
as
up with a,
us
we can
to draw these
partner with
people
them,
in,
yeah, or whatever.
and loves through us. And I'm all over that. I'm
Mhm.
all over that. So makes for an interesting life.
So good. So good. Yeah. It's that. Yes, and it's that, so one thing, a new commandment I
Yeah,
give you, that you love one another as I've loved you. By this, everyone will know you're my disciples. So it's like, wow, you're following Him because you're loving, and you're loving out of your being, and you're loving because you're
yeah.
loved, and He's loving through
I have
you,
a I have a
and
pastor
it's
friend that,
beautiful. It's
and
beautiful.
ironically, he lives in Texas now, and he and I used to be real close. We lived close together, and we actually worked together some back in the day, and in our secular jobs. And he the last time I saw him, he was up here visiting his kids in the same town that we live in, and he got me aside one day, and he said, a little one after that afternoon, he said,
Mhm.
um, I've been reading some of the stuff that you're posting. He said, I am appalled that I didn't learn this before now. Because he's like 80 now. And he said, I drove my children away from God
Aw.
because of all the rules and regulations that my denomination put on us. And I said, I know the feeling.
Yeah.
I wish
Yeah.
we'd have known this when we were raising our kids,
Yeah.
because it would have made a whole difference in how we dealt with them too.
Yes.
Because instead of dealing with there were so many people when my kids were growing up, and his too, I'm sure, were, the thing was all about tough love. Well, and they even, it was even preached from the pulpit, that God uses tough love. Well, that's not true at all. And so we try and do this with our grandkids now, is we try and treat them with the ultimate grace. Of course, I don't know about you, but it's easier with grandkids. I'm just letting you know that. Yeah,
Yes, I'm prepared.
but
We haven't got any yet.
I say that
Yeah,
tongue in
I've
cheek.
heard.
Yeah,
Forward to it.
it's just, I really sometimes regret, and God doesn't want us to have regrets, I don't think. And sometimes I feel regret for not knowing this when
No.
my children are growing up. And
Yeah.
I will have to say,
Yeah.
I'm still working on this myself. I go through spells where it's like, okay,
Oh,
after I do something, I'll be like, oh, that was the old me coming out, you know. And so I battle, and just like it's
yes.
like the Apostle Paul
Yes.
said,
It's
the
very
things
sneaky.
that I want to do, I don't, and the things I don't want to do, I do, and that it happens, it just happens sometimes, and it's just uh, it's just the world we live in, and it's human nature,
Such a
truthfully,
human quandary.
and it's not our godly nature; it's our human nature.
It is. And it's how we're exactly.
Yeah,
And where
exactly.
we're learning
Yeah,
where we're still unlearning, right? Because these are patterns and default ways of being that
yeah,
you have to exert energy, to counter.
yeah.
And
Well, we
to
don't really
unlearn and
know what we haven't
relearn. And
unlearned
who
until
knows
He
what you
shows
haven't
us.
unlearned yet, right? And so we're still
But he
growing.
wants to show us. He's willing to show us everything. We're just
Exactly.
sometimes we're not
Exactly.
ready to hear it. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's
Exactly.
exactly.
Exactly. There are things I have to say, but you can't bear it now. And but what's the beautiful thing is because he's so lovely that he gives you what you can work on and what you should work on
Yeah,
in your understanding, and then empowers you to do that.
he does.
So he sets you up for
Yeah, he
success
does.
in it. Yeah,
I'm
which is
amazed
beautiful. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
at the things that he does through us and with us, and it's not always just through us; it's in conjunction with
Hmm.
us. And I sometimes I feel like we're hand in hand beside each other.
Yes.
You know, uh, for lack of a better way to put it, working out our salvation, which we don't have to do technically, but we do those things with Him,
Absolutely.
and it, yeah,
It's beautiful. And that picture sometimes is a little more relational. I mean, we get it all. We get
yeah,
inside, beside, around, whatever. Hold my hand, walk me through all of it. We
yeah,
get everything, and it is a working out of what's completed. Um, but God is into the thing is with process, and this I don't know if you found this out. If you this makes sense to you. But the thing with process, because sometimes we get frustrated with process, we want to like arrive or whatever that would be. But if we didn't have a process, it would not be
Mm-hmm.
relational, because it requires that relational engagement to work out the process. It's the journey is actually the meaningful
Yeah.
thing, because God's with us on the journey and in the journey and empowering us in the journey. And so this is
Yeah.
where we
And
know
we
him more. And
learn,
if we know
I
him
mean,
more, we know
not just
ourselves
through
more.
church,
Yeah.
but through school.
So
We
it's,
learn to not be trusting, but to be analytical. And I don't think necessarily that God
yeah,
made us to be
it's true.
analytical. I think He made us to be trusting, and we've got this all messed up. We try to analyze everything out, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to. I don't
Yeah,
want to try and analyze God. I want God to analyze me. You know what I mean? And He's not going to do that. He's not going to do that.
right,
And so all
right,
He's going to do is love me. You know, He's going to love us. He's not going to analyze
right.
us. He's not. That's the farthest thing from His mind.
Yeah, yeah,
So
right. And it's a that has carries an attitude as if you're sifting through
yeah,
to, I don't know, to find something wrong, or something like that, or as if he doesn't understand the inner workings of our innermost parts. And of course, he's the creator
yeah.
and
What I
lover
think
of
my
those
favorite
parts.
thing is to have Him, to know that I am close enough with Him to hear His voice. I mean, I know I've been in times where I've heard His voice just like it was
Mm,
somebody sitting next to me, and that is that is it's empowering to have that happen.
it's the
You
best.
know, and one of my favorite stories about that is we had something going on. I don't remember
Oh
what it
my
was,
goodness.
and I was praying about it, and and sometimes we've been taught to. You ever heard the verse? Ever heard some people say, "Well, there's a verse that says pray without ceasing." Well, there's not a verse that says that. By the way, Jesus never said that, and just that's one of those things Jesus never said.
Yes.
And so, but we're taught that, just keep, if God doesn't answer, just keep praying, keep
Okay.
praying, keep praying. And so I was doing that, had prayed over and over about the same
Right.
thing,
Right.
probably several times a day for a while. And I was out. We used to live on a place out in the country, and I was out walking across the yard, and I was just praying about this and talking to God. And all of a sudden, He said, it was like He was standing right beside me, and He said, "What are you doing?" And I stopped in my tracks, and I said, "What do you, what do you mean? What am I doing? Do you not recognize what I'm doing?" And He goes, "I don't." And he said, I said, "Well, I'm
Jesus.
praying." And He goes, "No, you're not." And I'm like, "What do you mean I'm not?" He said, "You're whining." And I'm like, "What?" And He said, and he
Ooh,
brought to mind the scripture
Jesus.
in Mark chapter 21, or yeah, what is it? I can't think of the reference, but it's in verse 21, I believe. Mark chapter 4, maybe verse 21, where about the fig tree and the mountain and all the stuff. He said, I never said
Or
to ask and ask and ask and
yeah.
ask. I said, ask believing and it'd be done. I said, so you're telling me that I
Mm,
just need to ask once and
nice.
forget it? And he said, no, I'm telling you to ask once and then thank me for it. And I'm like, I can do that, you know. But it was so funny to have him say, "You're
Sweet.
whining." I'm thinking, I felt like a little kid that had been
Oh,
smacked, you know.
I think it's
Yeah,
adorable though, because it kind of wakes you up. It's like, wait a second. Yeah, I mean, isn't that, it's so adorable. And then he simplifies it for you. Son, you're laboring. And so ask believing. Let me help you believe, right? I believe, help my
Okay.
unbelief. And
Yeah.
and it shall be done. So then you
Yeah. Of
rest.
course,
It's
that's a
beautiful.
perfect
I mean,
parent.
that's
Yeah.
that's that's a
And like,
good
like I said,
parenting. It's a
my
good
dad was a
thought.
pastor. My dad is in the great cloud of witnesses now, but my mom is still living. And, I get a kick out of her and I get tickled at her because she's pretty, pretty Baptist theologically. And so she said, I pray for my grandkids every night. And last time I saw her, she mentioned that again. And I said, why? And she said, well, some of them are not doing what they're supposed to do. And I'm like, what are they supposed to do? What makes you the person that knows what they're supposed to do? I said, what gives you that authority? And she said, and it kind of took her aback a little bit, And she said, well,
Interesting.
you know, God, the Bible says that. And the Bible's perfect. And she said, well, yeah. And I'm like, no, it's not. I said, the Bible was written by man, and it's not the fourth person in the Trinity. It's not, you know. I said, if you really want to know, ask God to reveal it to you.
No.
You know what you should be praying about before you decide to pray for your grandkids over and over and over. Which is to me and I tell her this story about God talking to me, and she kind of goes, I don't believe that, But anyway,
Right.
so I said, if you really want to know what God wants you to pray about, ask Him to tell you, because He will. Just say, God, what do you want me to pray about?
Beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, and there's such a rest in it.
Who
There's
knows?
such a rest in it. So did she
She's
take you
pretty
up
set
on
in her
your
way.
offer?
She's
He's still
almost 90, so
grappling with it.
she's so funny though, because I mean, every time I see her, she says,
But
well, she said, I'm almost 90 years old. She said, but I tell you what, I still got it. I said, yep, I'm glad. So yeah, she's cute.
yeah,
She's funny.
great. Good genes there. That's great. That's adorable. Well, and the beautiful thing is, what
Yeah,
parent would have their kid just labor and
yeah,
ask
yeah,
over and
exactly.
over and try to convince me to be
Well,
good as a
Jesus
parent?
even
Yeah.
talked about
Yeah.
that. What father would
Mhm.
give their kid a snake if they asked for bread? Or give them a
Right.
stone if they ask for bread or whatever. It's just, you're not going to give them something bad if they ask for something good, and you're not going to make them ask over and over.
Exactly.
That's torture. God's not into torture at all.
Exactly. No,
Yeah, it's labor. Yeah, that's torture.
exactly. That's labor. Yeah. Well, and he said labor,
Mm-hmm.
it is. Labor is torturous. He said labor to enter the rest. So I
Yeah,
ask, and
and
you
so
said
that
yes, and I believe,
puts our
and now I
position
rest.
with
Thank
Him
you.
as one. We're one with Him.
And now we rest.
And it's hard for us to
Yes,
to grasp that, and what all that means. Because there's a lot to it. It does.
it is.
And one
Yeah,
of the things that
because it changes
I've
everything.
also he's
It
taught kind of
changes everything.
taught me and
Yeah.
teaching me, because you never learn anything totally, I don't think, is that everything that we need
Ongoing.
is already provided. He doesn't have to go back to the cross and do anything else. Everything is done. He said,
Beautiful.
it is finished. He meant it is finished.
Absolutely.
There's nothing else to do except love. And He does that. He already does that. And He doesn't say that, but He does that. That's His action.
God.
His action is love. And
Exactly.
we
Yes. Yeah.
we have a hard time grasping that, I think. But yeah, and once we get I mean, I talk to people about healing a lot, and that part of that I feel like kind of bounces off my faith preaching a little bit, but it doesn't. I mean, I have allowed him to, for lack of a better term, to tweak the way that, because we used to pray for everybody's healing and that God would come down and heal them. And now I've come to the realization that he doesn't have to come down and heal them because it's already done. It was done on the cross. It's waiting for them to receive it. But most of the time, I can't receive it for them. I'm not going to say I can't always, because sometimes I think he calls us to lay hands on people and administer healing to them. And at that point, that healing that is locked away in the realms of heaven is manifested through our touch. And it's not our touch, it's his touch through us. Because he's in us. He is us. I am he, and he is me.
Beautiful.
And so, yeah. And the more.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Wow.
Go ahead.
And maybe, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
I was going to say, maybe it's not so much locked up in heaven, but stored up for us.
Well, in most people's mind it is.
That they have access to.
Yeah.
I think some people feel it is locked, so I need to figure out
what's the combination?
How to jump through the hoops and do the things and do the magic to get
they're trying to look
God
for the combination to the lock.
Yes, exactly. What is it?
But I think that, and the reason I said it that way is because I think a lot of people feel that way.
That's exactly right. Okay.
I don't feel that way. I don't feel that way at all. I feel like it's in an, it's not even in a room. Yes. It's all in a big, just a big openness. It's all in big openness, and I think it's indwelling within the cloud of witnesses even, you know, and so all that stuff is present.
That's great.
I'm gonna go way out here. All that stuff is present in the quantum sphere, and Jesus was the ultimate quantum physicist.
Yes.
They spoke everything into existence.
Sure.
So it just tells us that tells us right there that the power of our words is incredible. It's incredible, Catherine, the power that our words have, and that we can speak. We're made in his image, so we can speak creation into livelihood just like he did. And it's all back to him through us.
Yes.
It's all him through us. We are him and he is us. And so, and I've been doing some study on quantum stuff, and it's extremely interesting to me.
Beautiful.
Sometimes way over my head.
It is. It's well, it does. It takes a lot, but that's.
Yeah.
I know Steve McVeigh was on a while back, and he's gifted. But even with its sort of translation, it's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to think about that. It's amazing stuff, right?
Well, that's part of the reason I say that we'll never
it's a beautiful
learn
bridge. Sorry, go ahead.
The completeness of our identity, because we're always learning new facets of it, and that's a perfect example. Because I had no idea, but even 3 years ago, I had no idea that my identity could be even considered to be tied to science, quantum mechanics, and now it's just like, and now I think, what else is out there for us to discover about who we are And there's tons of stuff out there that
Right.
it's exciting to me, to see the road
Yeah.
that he has us on. Yeah.
It is so exciting.
I'm having a good time with it, and he loves us. I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is great. Isn't that fun? That's, you know, exactly. And then, you know, what does that look like and how does that operate and what does that say about us? What does that say about him? What does it say about us and our oneness
Yeah.
and all of
Yeah.
that? And yeah, it's a
Well,
lot to
and
say.
it goes, back
Yeah.
to our
Yeah.
words. We've been in churches and stuff where they tell us how to think and and tell us who we are, and we receive that and believe that.
Right.
It's it's horrendous. It's a horrible travesty that we've been.
Yeah.
So sometimes people that have no religious
Yes.
background are way easier to talk to than people who have religious. Yeah, yeah,
Boy, that is true. That is true. Because sometimes they have it more intuitively, and it's like, oh, if you only knew how scriptural that is when you interpret scripture well, but that'll preach, but you just got it intuitively by relationship and just by this intuitive relationship that you had with
yeah,
God, even if you didn't
yeah.
know you had, it was
I
God,
I
it
heard a
was
song the other day,
Jesus. So
and
yeah, it's
I knew the
amazing.
song because I know the artist, and it's a country artist, and one of the verses in his song goes like this. It says, "I don't believe that heaven waits for only those who congregate. I like to think there's God above, or the God of love. He's down below and he's up above. He watches people everywhere. He knows who does and doesn't care.
Mhm.
But I'm an ordinary man. It doesn't matter who I am. I believe in him. I believe in love." Isn't that a cool song? That's a cool verse. And I know, and it's an old country song,
Oh,
and it's
that's
just something that
gorgeous.
God has given this guy to write and sing, and it's just and I like I said, I knew the song because he was one of my favorite artists years ago, and I still like him a lot. And the song it talks about uh, his, different things about different facets of love and stuff, but that particular verse, just the other day when I heard it on the radio, just jumped out at me, and I'm like, that's true. That's it right there. So it's fun. Fun.
Yeah, 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 and that's so true.
Yeah, exactly.
In a simple way,
And
that's
it just goes to show,
graspable,
to me, it
but
just goes to
really
show
deep.
how much
It's beautiful.
of
Yeah,
what goes
that's
on
beautiful.
in the universe, that God uses everything to show himself to us. And that's just, it's awesome to me. So,
Beautiful. Yeah, isn't that? I mean, it really is amazing, and just how gorgeous. Even when you consider, a a fallen, quote unquote, created uh, scene realm, um, it's still breathtakingly beautiful. And it just screams this creator that is beautiful and loves us, and how we are that in his image. And so, um, uh, and everywhere you go, I mean, this is why we go to places that are beautiful. We
yeah,
have you know uh, nature parks and things where we are preserving things because it's beautiful and it's restful and it's healing, and we connect to someone
absolutely.
who is eternal, even if we don't know who he is yet. But and speaks to something in us because he's in us,
And
right? And
if it
so
wasn't for the
all of
beauty of
that, and
creation,
it's
we'd
it's
never
it's
have to take
it's
a vacation,
beautiful.
right?
Wow, I love that.
Because we wouldn't have to go look at all the beautiful creation that He's made.
Yeah, right. Right. This is true. This is true. And there's so much, you know. I really came home to me one time
Mm-hmm.
because we had a bunch of forest fires. That's our natural disaster in Colorado, right? Everybody's got their natural disaster, and so, and literally, it just
Right.
decimates, you know, acres and acres and acres. It's charred, and we went to neighborhoods, and the houses looked like they were bombed out. It was just, really surreal. But it's amazing, even after just a short period of time, things just start coming back. They just start coming back. It's like it's irrepressible and unstoppable. And even what he's placed in nature to recreate itself, right? And recreate itself in beauty and wasteful beauty, because he clothes all these places that no one will see, but it's beautiful. It's wasteful, but it's not. It's just reflective of this incredible God who we look like,
Yeah.
who's
Well,
one
if
with
we look
us,
at that,
and
the
all of that. And
destructive things that come in our life bring
it's
new
very
life,
humbling.
and that's what you're talking about. Is it's total destruction, but yet up
Yes,
springs new life,
yes,
because it 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 can't go against that,
absolutely,
because that's the way God set it up, and so there's the universe can't go against that.
exactly,
It just can't,
exactly.
and it makes it do what now?
Yeah, yeah. The universe actually knows its creator.
Oh, absolutely.
That the universe knows its creator, and the one who created love.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so
absolutely, absolutely.
it's just
Yeah,
programmed for that, and we're
I
programmed
love
for that.
thinking about that, because
Yeah, it's beautiful.
and the universe knows His creator, and He knew us during that time. That's a heavy thought right there.
Yes, yes, yeah. I love this heavy duty. I mean, when I was growing up as a little girl, and we did not grow. I did not grow up. I grew up in a secular humanist background, so we were really kind of anti-Christian. Um, we were just too, I don't know, scholarly, whatever, broken is the term. But um, but I remember being terrified because I remember thinking, I'm forgetting the way to heaven. I'm forgetting the way to heaven. That was my brain of what it was, because there's
Hmm.
something in me that knew from whence I came and knew from whom I came, right? And so, and how as we enter a human body,
It
we
is.
forget
It is.
original
That's a whole nother
assignments.
hour or
That's kind of a
so.
whole nother topic, but it's a fun one. So
Yeah,
yes, yes, yes.
yeah. We are.
No, my goodness, when are you free next? We'll have to team up again. Yeah. And with that, I can't believe we're kind of
Yeah,
nearing the top of our time. I can't believe it. This has been so much fun. Um, do you have any, what final things for someone who's maybe struggling in their identity and being settled and being a human being, not a human doing? Any additional or final
yeah.
words of
Ask
encouragement or insight or
if you're struggling with
a
who
good
you
joke,
are.
something?
Ask God who you are. Don't ask other people. Ask God, because He's the one that knows you the best and loves you the most. So that's kind of my go-to with people.
Hmm. That's so good. Knows you the best
Absolutely.
and loves you the most. So when he tells you it's going to be something really good, I think sometimes we're afraid, oh, it's going to, but no, you have no idea how powerful and amazing and pure and holy and clever and funny and delightful, all the things that you
Yeah. If
are,
they
because
if
that's
they
who
would
he
ask,
is.
ask
And
God,
he's
and don't
thrilled
listen
to
to
let you know
yourself,
that. Yeah, I love that. Wow.
because you're your own. Everybody's their own worst critic.
Mm, yeah, yeah,
So yeah, that's kind of my go-to.
truly. Yeah, this is true. This is true. Wow.
Well,
Yeah, yeah, that's perfect.
we do a
So where can people
we
find
have
you?
our church has a website, and it's New Life Lawrence, is what our website is. And then I am on Facebook and I try to do a devotional. I try to do them every day. That doesn't always happen, but I'll get a couple in a week at least. And that's and on
They're
Facebook I
good.
am. It says Jerry L. Gray, and then parentheses it says JL. So that way you know it's me, because there's a lot of Jerry Grays. And so yeah. And so anyway, that's
A lot of Jerry Gray one.
you can find us there.
Just kidding.
We're in Lawrence, Kansas. So if you're anywhere close to us,
That's funny.
look me up, and send
And
me
you
a
do.
message, and I'd be glad to reach out to you.
Yay.
So yeah,
That's lovely.
yeah, absolutely. Hey,
Well,
you're in
it's
Colorado
been
Springs, right?
delightful. We'll have to do it again if you're willing. It's just I'm in Colorado Springs, and that's actually where I met Paul.
Yeah,
Paul was driving through,
I
so
was
I had
I was stationed in
dinner with
Colorado
Paul and
Springs in the
Kitsy,
military.
so I missed them. So, but yeah, so that's
Yep. Yeah,
you
we
were. Were
we
you Air
actually
Force?
lived east of town out by
Yes,
Calhoun.
nice, very nice. Yeah, my husband was Navy.
Yeah. Well, we weren't way out there, but we were on Calhoun address.
Okay. Oh, way out there. Yeah.
We're about halfway
Calhoun.
between there and
Oh,
halfway between
Cowtown.
there and Colorado Springs.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. Wow. Some geography in common. So yeah, oh, wonderful. Yeah. Well, it has been delightful. Thank you so much for joining. Everybody share this with someone. Someone needs what this message not only says, but just the spirit that's behind it, and how affirming and life-giving that is.
Amen.
So
My
it's
pleasure.
been a joy. So thank you so much for joining, and I appreciate you. Awesome.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody, share this and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Perspectives with Catherine Toon. For additional information and resources, please visit catherinetoon.com.